Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
Positronic hypersonic.
I'm Barry P. Cook, and I'm here to do a breakdown and review for you of Avatar Fire and Ash, aka Avatar 3, which just opened in the US today. And as the film starts, it's shortly after the point at which Jake Sully and his family have settled in with, I'm going to say this wrong, Mecha Uniclan. And they're grappling with the grief over the death of Jake's son. Neytiri, in particular, has developed a hatred towards humans. As for two of their children, we find them helping to recover human weapons from the sunken human ship that was sunk at the end of the previous film. Upon the arrival of flying merchant ships, Jake and Neytiri force Spider to leave the clan because he just doesn't really belong there. He's human, and he always has to wear his oxygen mask because he can't breathe the atmosphere, and they just think it's best for him and everyone if he doesn't live among the Na'vi anymore. The ship convoy, though, is ambushed by an aggressive Na'vi tribe led by the vicious Varang. They set fire to the merchant ships, looting them and killing the survivors. Jake, Neytiri, and the children are separated, but not before La'ok kills several of the attacking tribe with an assault rifle. Later, Colonel Quatrich from the last movie and Jake cross paths and reluctantly work together to find Spider, who is, of course, the Colonel's son. And since Spider lacked a backup oxygen mask, he collapses when the one he's been wearing malfunctions, and he can't breathe. Jake's daughter Kiri connects her tail to the ground and goes into a sort of trance, and this causes his body to be enveloped in mycelia, after which he gains the ability to breathe on Pandora without a mask. Eventually, they're all trapped by the fighters from the attacking tribe, at which point Quatrich and Jake arrive, and Quatrich teaches Varang how to use guns. Using her power to connect with Iwa, Kiri commands the wildlife in the area to kill some of the fighters, and everyone escapes. They're soon picked up, though, by a rescue group and Neytiri, while Quatrich and Lyle Wainfleet escape. After examining Spider, Norm and Max discover an organism inside his body which could be reverse engineered to allow every human to breathe on Pandora, and that he'd grown his own neural queue from the base of his head, allowing him to connect to Pandoran wildlife like the Na'vi. Quatrich travels to the village of the attacking tribe from earlier. They're the Ash people, bringing them supplies of firearms and flamethrowers because he wants their help in getting Spider back. He convinces them to become allies with him, promising that they'll be able to take over any other clan and territory together, and he and Varang begin a romantic relationship. Meanwhile, Kiri helps Spider adjust to bonding with the wildlife, and they share a little smooch. They're then ambushed, and Spider is kidnapped, forcibly taken for analysis at the RDA base, the base of the humans, I guess for a second time? Quatrich returns to the village with Varang, and Jake surrenders himself to avoid war, at which point he's taken to the RDA base to face execution. And Quatrich brings the tribe to the base as well. Next, hundreds of Tulkun congregate for an annual mating event, which could bring substantial profit if the creatures that showed up for this ritual are hunted. But one biologist working for the RDA opposes the plan, though his advice is ignored. Neytiri then infiltrates the base and destroys some of their infrastructure, while this biologist steals a bulldozer to free Jake from captivity. The RDA can't afford to kill Spider due to the research potential that he holds, so Spider acts as a human shield to protect Jake as he escapes. Then Jake and Neytiri argue over the fact that Spider is a liability and should probably be killed, which Jake eventually does try to do, only to be overcome with grief and stop at the last minute. And Neytiri finally accepts Spider as part of the family after initially being the one to suggest that he needed to be killed, which Jake had initially resisted the idea of. Jake then warns the Tulkun Council about an oncoming massacre, but the council decides not to act until one of Jake's sons shows them the sole survivor of a human attack, and they reconsider. Jake and the Tanukh then rally all the Na'vi clans to battle, and the next day, they decimate an unsuspecting RDA fleet. Suddenly, though, the Ash tribe and Quatrich attack, inflicting heavy casualties. Kiri, though, then commands the wildlife, the ocean wildlife, to attack the rest of the RDA fleet, including their huge ship. Varang then tries to kill Neytiri, but is overwhelmed by Kiri's Q connection to her, which she ambushes her with, and the main command RDA ship is destroyed. In a sort of final conflict, Spider ends up shooting Quatrich, who again is his father, but falls off a floating rock only to be caught by Quatrich and then pulled up to safety along with Quatrich by Jake. Neytiri and the children arrive, intent on doing him in, and seeing where things were going, Quatrich jumps off the rock into oblivion. As the film ends, Spider and the clan members reconnect to the underwater spirit tree, where he meets all of the deceased Na'vi that we've come to know from the previous movies and this one. Kiri even introduces Spider to Grace, her, I guess, clone mom, and they initiate him into the tribe as the scene cuts to a planet-wide interconnected mycelial network. And that's where the movie ends. So, I remember really liking the first movie, being very impressed with the technology, which at the time was brand new, having been invented by James Cameron pretty much and his people. And, finding the story very compelling, if a bit derivative of, stories we've seen in the past where one group of people is trying to exploit another group of people because of a resource. It's been seen in Star Trek. It's been seen in like actual history of the world for real life. It did some unique things though, and so it was a fantastic achievement in cinema. I didn't like the second movie. I really didn't care for Avatar 2, and you can check out my review of that film on the channel. There were just a lot of things in it that didn't make sense. I spent a lot of time focused on the kids, which made it more of a YA movie. So I wasn't expecting great things from this movie other than the use of the technology, because these movies are just gorgeous. They're just beautiful, and there's no denying that. But I'm happy to say that I enjoyed watching all 3 hours and 8 minutes of it, even though I thought it was a little padded, and even though I thought that it's just basically a rehash of the previous movies. Like, they did the first one and you go, okay, the story, okay. And they did the second one and you think, okay, they're still kind of struggling with the same enemy and they defeat them a second time. And it's like, okay, okay, cool. We've seen it twice now. And but the third story, the third movie, it is the same story. It's pretty much the same story. The particulars are different, but it's the same story. That the humans are still on, Pandora, and they're trying to figure out a way to maximize its resources, and they were trying to figure out a way to colonize it in the second movie, and they're still bent on colonizing it in this movie, and they figured out they could maybe study this kid and make it so everyone would be able to breathe, so they're trying to get him, and that's like the nitty-gritty of the plot, but it's the same story. It's the story of the colonizers, right? The superior force, quote-unquote, against the native people who, are beleaguered and, a bit hopeless and don't think they can win, and it's up to this one kind of messianic figure to rally them, and he does, and they fight and win again, a third time. They win against the particular threat of the day from the colonizers.
And, just to contrast this to something like Star Wars, which you could argue is very similar, right? The first three, in particular, are 3 movies where, it starts out with a set of characters and they're fighting the Empire and they kind of win the day, right, and blow up the Death Star. But then in the second one, they're kind of still fighting against them. And, the kind of movie ends in a stalemate with neither side really winning anything. And then the third one, they're fighting the same people yet again. But the difference is in the end of the third one, they win like a big, big victory, right? They kill the main bad guy and the galaxy is free from the Empire, right? So the story comes to an end after the third one, and in between, they're going all over the galaxy. They're on different planets, right? There's Tatooine, there's Bespin, which is not a planet, but you know what I mean, and Hoth and Dagobah and Endor, and there's just a whole lot of variety in the story, and it's not as ping-pongy back and forth as it is in these 3 movies where, there's a skirmish and the sides take losses, and then there's another skirmish and the sides take losses, and then there's a big battle where the Na'vi kind of sort of win the day, only not really, because the colonizers are still there on the one planet that's ever been in the movies.
And it's like, I've seen this movie twice now, and I'm seeing it again, and they're just changing some of the pieces around the board, changing an angle or two that you're looking at the movie through, but it is the same story. And it's a back and forth, neither it's a stalemate, right? I mean, they win in the end, the Na'vi, but like the colonizers haven't left. They're not all dead, right? They're not planning on leaving. There's going to be another one, right? There's two more planned at least, and it's just going to be it's the same thing, the same story. But I did like it despite that, I was saying, because in this case, I thought that they gave us a particularly good angle in the tribe of the Ash people. Because we met a second tribe in the second movie, but they were also kind of peaceful. They were just the underwater people, and they seemed civilized. But these people are kind of more barbaric and warlike. And so it was a new take on the Na'vi, and you really kind of felt a difference and a conflict, and it was interesting. And in particular, Varang was a really compelling character. I thought a really mesmerizing character, and the young lady that played her by the name of Una Chaplin, as in Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter, does a fantastic job in the part. The character is fierce, the character is scary, the character has a sort of spiritual aspect to her that makes her very interesting and very unique among all the Na'vi characters that we've seen 3 times now. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And there's a sort of spiritual journey that takes place for the Sigourney Weaver Na'vi character, the daughter, that she kind of started in the last movie and kind of sees to completion in this movie. And that's kind of compelling, but not terribly. So if it weren't for the Ash tribe and this Varanga character, I don't think I would have liked this movie any better than the previous one, because it's very rehash. All 3 movies have ended in basically a stalemate where the Na'vi win the day, as it were, but these are battles. The war is not over. And that's fine in one aspect, because they're going to make 5 movies, and as long as in the end there's a resolution proper, hopefully one where the Na'vi win and the humans go away, that will be fine. But why do they have to tell the story 5 times to get there? Why? In order for that to be valid, what happens in the individual chapters has to be very weighty and very heavy and very meaningful, and it wasn't in the second one, I didn't think, and it really isn't in this one. So I know it sounds like I didn't enjoy the movie, even though I keep saying I did, but I did more than the second one. But that's not saying a lot, because I thought the second one was awful, except for the stunning, cinematography and visuals. It's just rehash. The fortunate thing about this movie, again, versus the second one, is it didn't have a lot of dumb in it. There's a lot of dumb in the second one. This one didn't have all the dumb. Unless you want to argue that, oh, they've suddenly magically figured out a way to cure this kid and now he can breathe on the planet because the girl with the spiritual connection to the mycelial network was able to connect him to it and change his body. Okay, but that's like a sort of magic trick, right? They wrote a magic trick into the movie. So I don't know. It sort of advances the plot because it gives the humans something to sort of covet. But at the same time, it's like stunt writing. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I guess the whole series has been guilty of that, right? Unobtainium was the thing in the first movie, and it's just this magic property, right? This magic object that is coveted by the humans. So there's a lot of that going on in the whole series. So I don't know. It's an entertaining watch because of the visuals and the cinematography and the Varanga character and the fight scenes and all of that stuff, which, by the way, don't start happening until 25 minutes into the movie. The first 25 minutes are very, very tepid. And, on the one hand, that's not such a big deal because there's another 2.5 hours worth of movie, for action to take place. But at the same time, it's a 3-hour movie. And if they weren't going to get to the action for the first 25 minutes, why is it 3 hours long? Why, what happens in those first 25 minutes would have to be of great import, and it isn't. So I don't know. Just like the last one, this movie's kind of a mess, but It has the redeeming quality of the Ash people, which have a very different look. You know, the Water tribe from the second movie has a slightly different look from the Na'vi that we saw in Avatar 1, but these people are strikingly different looking, and I thought that that was good. And like I said, they behave a lot differently, and so that was entertaining and I think worthwhile. But the rest of it is rehash. It's rehash of the same moral conundrum that they had in the first one, and it's rehash of the same ping pong back and forth of, you know, the humans win a skirmish, the Na'vi win a skirmish, the humans win a skirmish, the Na'vi win a skirmish, and then ultimately the Na'vi win the day, as it were, but the colonizers haven't left yet. Because James Cameron, for some reason, thinks we need two more movies to get to that point. And we know they're going to get to that point, right? The fifth movie is not going to end in the destruction of Pandora, where the humans win and take over the planet, and the Na'vi are decimated and, you know, reduced down to having no survivors practically. That's not how it's going to end. It's going to end with the humans fucking off, right? So why are we taking 5 movies to get there? You would have to have very compelling narratives in the movies following the first one in order for it to justify not having ended that way, you know, with the humans fucking off at the end of the first one, and they just haven't gotten there. This movie's more compelling than the second one. I liked it better than the second one, but it's not anything fantastic. It's a 3 out of 5, I think. Aside from the action sequences and the visuals, and of course, the mocap work is amazing. You know, Zoe Saldana and Sigourney Weaver, who's in this only as a child avatar, and you know the other actors that are in it. Una Chaplin is fantastic, you know, in the mocap that she does in this. So it's great to watch that stuff, but it's a slog really, and not ultimately, I think, worth 3 hours, and you know, not worth being a third movie in a 5 movie saga. I think, you know, at this point he made the first two. Skip to the end, James. Get to the do the you know, get to the story of the fifth one, but without giving us 3 and 4 in between, and then we can see the Na'vi ultimately triumph over the humans, and they can fuck off back to Earth, and it'll be over. Why do we have to keep telling the same story 4 more times? You know, I don't understand. I really don't. But anyway, if you liked the first one, you know, and you were okay with the second one, I say go ahead and see this one. It's got compelling elements, but, you know, again, it's not anything spectacular aside from technical aspects. And that's just the truth. So that's really all I have to say. I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back with another video soon. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.